Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class from Canto 2, Chapter 10. And this morning we're doing text number 43. And we're very, very, very fortunate to have Her Grace Anandarupa Mataji from ISKCON, DC to give the class. Hare Krishna, Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Jai.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, all dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai Guru Guru.
Hare Krishna. It's all yours now. Please go ahead.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandan Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandan Braja Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
Jai.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhans Parivrajakacarya Stotar Shat Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhans Parivrajakacarya Stotar Shat Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की जय, वृंदावन धाम की जय, मायापुर धाम की जय, जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय, गंगा माई की जय, जमुना माई की जय, भक्तिमय तुलसी देवी की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव विंद की जय। ऑल ग्लोरीज टू द assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriyet. Shrotam Katha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridayantasto He Bhadrani Vidunoti Srhatsatam Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Ruttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. Hare Krishna. Today we are reading from Canto 2, Chapter 10, verse 43. Tata kālāgni-rudrātmā yat sṛṣṭam idam ātmanaḥ sanniyacchati tataḥ kāle ghanānīkam ivānilaḥ. Tata kālāgni-rudrātmā yat sṛṣṭam idam ātmanaḥ sanniyacchati tat kāle ghanānīkam ivānilaḥ. Tata kālāgni-rudrātmā yat sṛṣṭam idam ātmanaḥ sanniyacchati tat kāle ghanānīkam ivānilaḥ. Please recite.
Tataḥ kālāgni-rudrātmā yat sṛṣṭam idam ātmanaḥ sanniyacchati tat kāle ghanānīkam ivānilaḥ. Hare Krishna.
Anyone else? Neelu, Mataji?
Hare Krishna Mataji. Tataḥ kālāgni-rudrātmā yat sṛṣṭam idam ātmanaḥ sanniyacchati tat kāle ghanānīkam ivānilaḥ. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Tataḥ kālāgni-rudrātmā yat sṛṣṭam idam ātmanaḥ sanniyacchati tat kāle ghanānīkam ivānilaḥ. Hare Krishna.
Did we hear another Mataji wanted to recite as well? Please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Prabhuji. Okay.
Tataḥ kālāgni-rudrātmā yat sṛṣṭam idam ātmanaḥ sanniyacchati tat kāle ghanānīkam ivānilaḥ. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we'll read the synonyms now, word by word meanings. Tata, thereafter, at the end. Kāla, destruction. Agni, fire. Rudra, Atma, in the form of Rudra. Yat, whatever. Sṛṣṭam, created. Idam, all these. Atmana, of his own. Sam, completely. Niyacchati, annihilates. Tat kāle, at the end of millennium. Ghanānīkam, bunches of clouds. Eva, like that of. Anilah, air. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thereafter, at the end of millennium, the Lord himself, in the form of Rudra, the destroyer, will annihilate the complete creation as the wind displaces the clouds. Purport, Jai Prabhupada. This creation is very appropriately compared to the clouds. Clouds are created or situated in the sky, and when they are displaced, they remain in the same sky without manifestation. Similarly, the whole creation is made by the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his form of Brahma. It is maintained by him in the form of Vishnu, and it is destroyed by him in the form of Rudra or Shiva, all in due course. This creation, maintenance, and destruction are nicely explained in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, as follows. Bhutagrama sa evayam bhuta bhuta praliyate ratri agame avasa partha prabhavati aharagame. Prabhuji, can you scroll? Parastasmat tu bhavunyo avyakto avyaktat sanatana yasa sarveshu bhuteshu nashayatsu na vinashyati. The nature of material world is that it is first created very nicely. Then it develops very nicely and stays for a great number of years, even beyond the calculation of the greatest mathematician. But after that, it is again destroyed during the night of Brahma without any resistance. And at the end of the night of Brahma, it is again manifested as a creation to follow the same principles of maintenance and destruction. The foolish conditioned soul who has taken this temporary world as a permanent settlement has to learn intelligently why such creation and destruction is taking place. The fruitive actors in the material world are very enthusiastic in the creation of big enterprises, big houses, big empires, big industries, and so many big things out of the energy and ingredients supplied by the material agent of the Supreme Lord. With such resources and at the cost of valuable energy, the conditioned soul creates, satisfies his whims, but unwillingly has to depart from all his creations and enter into another phase of life to create again and again. To give hope to such foolish conditioned souls who waste their energy in this temporary material world, the Lord gives information that there is another nature which is eternally existent and without being occasionally created or destroyed, and that the conditioned soul can understand what he should do and how his valuable energy may be utilized. Instead of wasting his energy in matter, which is sure to be destroyed in due course by the supreme will, the conditioned soul should utilize his energy in the devotional service of the Lord so that he can be transferred to the other eternal nature, where there is no birth, no death, no creation, no destruction, but permanent life instead, full of knowledge and unlimited bliss. The temporary creation is thus exhibited and destroyed just to give information to the conditioned soul who is attached to temporary things. It is also meant to give him a chance for self-realization and not for sense gratification, which is the prime aim of all fruitive actors. Hare Krishna. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshitarine Om Jnanatirmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tadaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Jai Guru Maharaj, Shri Guru Vrinda ki jai. Thank you everyone for this opportunity and for showing up, being present here in this talk. As I was preparing for this verse, my son asked me, Mom, what are you working on? What is it about? And I shared with him, I think in the most summarized way, I said, it is about if everything is temporary, then what should we live for? So this verse is talking about annihilation, creation, and fruitive mentality in ignorance of the higher vision. So seeing destruction at multiple levels, reading about destruction at multiple levels, we should internally reflect on what's happening. And if this world, which we constantly hear about, is temporary, ashashvatam, that's how Bhagavad Gita mentions it, then what should we work on? What are we supposed to do? So if we pause and observe life carefully, we notice a lot of interesting things. Our phones, iPhones, newer models are coming. Our phones may be lost. Some drop the phone in the middle of the lake, doing some outdoor activities. Phones get replaced. Technologies become outdated. There are new jobs, employment, unemployment, companies rise and fall, and even our own bodies are constantly changing. Srimad Bhagavatam talks about transformations going on in the body too. So we see changes, transformations, destructions on many levels. Our body, one day it will dissolve. All this civilization will dissolve. Even the universe itself will dissolve. In other words, change and dissolution are happening all around us all the time. But the devotion we cultivate, our remembrance of our relationship with Krishna, our service to him, to his devotees, our chanting of his holy names. So the Puranas, the Shastras, Vedas, they describe that continues beyond all these dissolutions. Therefore, the Srimad Bhagavatam invites us to invest our life in something that time cannot destroy. And the wisdom from Srimad Bhagavatam expands this simple observation into profound spiritual insight by describing 4 levels of dissolution that occur in the material world. This will come up later in Canto 12, but at a high level, I'm mentioning it. And I will also go through it in very brief to the degree that how Prabhupada has briefly mentioned it in the purport. So one of the striking features of Vedic cosmology is that it teaches us to think in layers of time and destruction. What appears extremely permanent at one level becomes very temporary when seen from larger perspective. And when devotees hear these descriptions, they do not simply learn cosmology, they develop spiritual detachment and clarity of this big picture we are supposed to understand. So let's talk about this. Smallest daily dissolution. So I was thinking of a practical day-to-day example to go with this dissolution. So, sometimes we conduct interfaith programs, and recently we visited a senior assisted living program, and we met residents who have lived incredibly accomplished lives. Many are from backgrounds like teaching, military, medicine, some kind of role they have had from business and all that. Yet something very strikingly happens in that environment where, we did the presentation and outreach. Every few months, a familiar chair in the gathering room becomes empty. Someone who used to sit there, sing, or share stories has quietly left the body. And in those moments, everyone becomes very reflective. So the titles, the properties, the awards, the promotions, all of these things suddenly seem less central than the question like, did I live my life meaningfully? Did I cultivate love, faith, inner peace, all those good things we love to hear and aspire to imbibe? In this way, the assisted living community becomes a gentle reminder of first and the most immediate type of dissolution, the end of the body. And the most immediate destruction we experience is the destruction of body. So every embodied being eventually reaches the moment when the soul leaves the body and physical elements return to nature. This is the truth of life. And Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that soul simply moves from one body to another as person changes garments. Dehino asmin yatha dehe. The body appears stable while we inhabit it, but in truth, it's constantly changing and eventually dissolves. So in this sense, death itself is a kind of miniature pralaya, annihilation or transformation or dissolution. In different ways we can understand it. The same 5 elements that compose the body return to their original states. Earth returns to earth, water to water, air to air. Yet the conscious self continues, the soul continues. The Bhagavatam repeatedly reminds us the tragedy of human life is not death itself, but forgetting the spiritual purpose of life before the death arrives. And that is a real loss, actually. So now let's talk about this. Srila Prabhupada mentioned in the purport. Let me take a look at the verse again. So the translation says, thereafter at the end of millennium, the Lord himself in the form of Rudra, the destroyer, will annihilate the complete creation as the wind displaces the clouds. So this is one kind of annihilation, but Srimad Bhagavatam talks about 4, and I already briefly mentioned one kind. Now let's come to the second kind, and we'll also come to this kind which is mentioned in the translation. So there is a nightly dissolution in this cycle of manifestation and withdrawal. And so let us think of all those big events which are celebrated like Diwali Mela, Rath Yatra festival, big gatherings. So the event locations, they become incredibly vibrant. Hundreds of people arrive, booths are set up, devotional music is playing and discussions are happening, prasadam is being distributed. Kirtan is going on, and for several hours, the whole environment feels like bustling or like a bustling little universe. But when the event ends, eventually everything disappears. I mean, they're moved around, things are put away, areas cleaned up, the tents come down, the stalls are packed, the crowd disperses, and by next morning, the same place looks completely vacant, almost as if nothing happened there. It reminds us how manifestation and withdrawal happen in cycles. In the same way, we are learning from Srimad Bhagavatam that the end of Brahma's day, at the end of Brahma's day, it mentions in the purport also, the universe also withdraws temporarily before manifesting again when the next cycle begins. So beyond individual death, the scripture describes a far larger level of dissolution that occurs at the end of each day of Brahma. So we are going to talk about dissolution at the end of each day of Brahma, at the end of life of Brahma, like that. So a single day of Brahma lasts 1000 cycles of 4 yugas. We learn that in Srimad Bhagavatam. At the end of that immense period, a partial destruction takes place. And during this time, what happens? The lower planetary systems are withdrawn and the universe enters a state of suspension. So, Srimad Bhagavatam describes how this dissolution is carried out through the agency of Lord in the form of Rudra or Shiva, or through the expansion of Sankarshan, who withdraws the manifested elements. And then what happens to Brahmaji? He enters into sleep and creation resumes again when he awakens. So Krishna refers to this in Bhagavad Gita, explaining that all living entities repeatedly manifest when Brahma's day begins and are withdrawn when his night arrives. And this cycle repeats again and again across vast stretches of cosmic time. Even such an enormous span of existence, all this, what we are hearing about, far beyond human imagination, is still temporary. So now let's talk about total dissolution at the end of Brahma's life. So far we talked about 2 of them, right? Which one are those? Anyone remembers? Can someone speak up? Which 2 kinds of dissolutions we already talked about? One was end of body, and the second was nightly dissolution of the universe. And now the third one is the total dissolution at the end of Brahma's life. So sometimes, in philosophical discussions, we are talking about how entire civilizations once thought permanent have disappeared. And great empires like, for example, Roman Empire or ancient dynasties built magnificent cities, roads, institutions, and systems of governance that seemed unshakable at that time. Yet today, most of them survive only as ruins or chapters in history books. And we hear in news, archaeologists are excavating and they find remains or the ruins. So this perspective helps people grasp a deeper truth that Bhagavatam is teaching, that even if vast civilization and systems eventually disappear, then over much longer cosmic time scales, entire universes themselves also undergo dissolution at the end of Brahma's life. So the next level of destruction occurs at the end of Brahma's life, which lasts 100 of his years. So now the numbers, exact numbers, you can look up. It's a big number, but whatever is the end of Brahma's life, so 100 of his years. And when that period concludes, the entire universe dissolves completely. So all planetary systems, all material elements, and even Brahma himself becomes withdrawn. And the elements merge back into subtle states, and universe returns into the body of Mahavishnu, also known as Karno-dakshai Vishnu. So the Bhagavatam is, presenting this knowledge, how countless universes emanate from pores of Mahavishnu when he exhales and returns, and return when he inhales. So we get all this information in 2nd and 3rd canto, the topics of Sarg and Visarg, primary creation and secondary creation. So from our perspective, Brahma's lifespan over about 3 trillion earthly years seems almost eternal. But compared to Mahavishnu, it is only a moment within his breathing cycle. And this really can humble the conditioned soul, this knowledge, this realization. Even the longest conceivable life within the material universe is still fleeting when measured against Lord's eternity. Now let's talk about 4th kind of dissolution. Okay? This is the ultimate dissolution of material identity. So we often meet devotees, when they are presenting Krishna consciousness or in outreach activities, they often meet people who initially identify themselves strongly with labels of profession, of nationality, of ideology, or social identity. But as they begin chanting, as they begin studying Bhagavad Gita or practicing bhakti, some gradual transformation happens. They start saying things like, I used to think my whole life, my whole identity was my career or my achievements. Now I am beginning to understand that I'm actually a spiritual being. There's a quote, we are spiritual beings having human experience. So in that moment, when such discussion happens, a deeper kind of dissolution begins, not of the body or universe, but of false identification. And these dissolutions, or as annihilation, the term coming up in the shloka is pralaya. So this is the most meaningful pralaya, when the illusion of I am this body, meaning misidentifying at the bodily level, when this dissolves and the soul awakens to its eternal identity as a servant of Krishna, Jivera Swarup Hoye Krishnera Nityadas. So this meaningful transformation, the dissolution of false identification, is a very important one. Bhagavad Gita teaches this philosophy. And when a living being awakens to devotional consciousness, the illusion of material identity gradually dissolves. What is the realization? Gradual realization? I am not this body. I am an eternal servant of Krishna. And this realization marks the beginning of liberation. Why I'm talking about this in this verse of annihilation? Because when we learn that everything is temporary, then what are we supposed to do? That is where this talk is heading to. So Krishna describes this material world as dukkha alayam ashashvatam in Bhagavad Gita. What does that mean? Dukkha alayam, a place of misery, place of suffering. Ashashvatam means temporary place. So dukkha alayam ashashvatam means a temporary place filled with suffering. Yet we are learning here simultaneously that the same world becomes meaningful when used in devotional service. So for the materialist, the world appears temporary and frustrating, but for the devotee, the world becomes a temporary opportunity for material service. So what is the devotee's insight? Whether we observe in the body or in the social events, or in rise and fall of civilizations, or in the transformation of our own identity. These are the 4 dissolutions I just talked about. The principle of dissolution, it is everywhere. And Bhagavatam simply expands our vision and shows that this same pattern operates all the way up to the scale of entire universe. And when these levels of dissolutions are contemplated together, a beautiful clarity emerges. At the smallest scale, bodies perish. At the cosmic scale, universes dissolve. At the largest scale, even Brahma's existence ends, and one thing never disappears. What is that? Who can comment on that? What is the one thing which stays, which goes on with the soul? What is that? Can someone comment on that? Hare Krishna.
The super soul.
Hari Bol.
Super soul.
Let's first think with respect to the soul first. Okay, there is a comment by Chitra Mataji. Let me see. Krishna. Okay. All right. So what I was implying was the loving relationship between soul and Krishna. Of course, there has to be soul and Krishna for the loving relationship. So that never disappears. And Bhagavatam therefore teaches that the real purpose of understanding cosmic destruction is not intellectual curiosity. It is spiritual redirection. So when we understand the temporary nature of everything else, the heart naturally seeks what is eternal. Okay? So how do we see destruction? Through the eyes of devotion. So one of the deepest transformations that devotional life offers is a change of vision. Param drishtva nivartate, higher vision. The world outside may appear exactly the same, yet devotee begins to see a completely different meaning behind the events of life. Current situation, world affairs, current affairs going on, lot of devotees have a different perspective than what is being broadcasted on the news or forecasted by astrologers. So to an ordinary observer, destruction appears frightening. Civilization collapse, bodies change, relationships change, and eventually everything dissolves. From a purely material viewpoint, all this looks like a loss, right? But Srimad Bhagavatam teaches something extraordinary. What is that? What appears to be destruction is actually divine rearrangement. And this universe operates in a rhythmic cycle. What is the rhythmic cycle? Creation, maintenance, dissolution. And the Lord manifests these through his divine energies and empowered forms. The universe appears, expands, flourishes for an immense period of time, and then withdraws again. Yet nothing actually becomes lost. So Srimad Bhagavatam is actually beautifully comparing the universe to clouds appearing in the sky. We read about that. Clouds, what happens? What is the cycle of clouds? They form, they change shape, they move across the sky, and eventually they dissolve. But the sky itself remains unchanged. Similarly, the elements of the universe, what are those elements? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. They simply rearrange themselves under divine supervision. Forms appear and disappear, yet underlying reality remains untouched. And this deeper truth is echoed in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is telling Arjuna that unreal has no lasting existence and the real never ceases to be. This is given in chapter 2. What we call destruction is often only disappearance of a temporary configuration of matter. So from spiritual perspective, the drama of this creation and destruction is like waves rising and falling on an ocean. The waves come and go, but the ocean remains. So what is the position of conditioned soul? The conditioned soul tends to become absorbed in the waves rather than the ocean. And because of this illusion, many devote enormous energy to building structures of permanence in a world, and Prabhupada is nicely explaining that in the purport. So people are busy in constructing, building structures of permanence in a world that is inherently temporary. Acquisition of so many properties, property management, wealth management, you know it all. So empires rise, industries expand, cities grow, and individuals invest their lives into possessions and achievements. Yet the same scriptures remind us that all such constructions must eventually dissolve under the influence of time. So, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna explains all the created beings repeatedly come into existence and are again withdrawn when the cosmic cycle ends. And what happens? This cycle continues again and again. But immediately after describing this cycle, Krishna reveals a profound secret that beyond this changing universe, there exists another reality, an eternal nature that never undergoes creation or destruction. And what is that? That eternal realm is the spiritual world. And the purpose of understanding this cosmic dissolution is therefore not fear. It is not for spreading fear. It is an awakening. So Srimad Bhagavatam explains that temporary creation exists partly to educate the conditioned soul. When we observe how everything eventually disappears, we are meant to ask a deeper question. What is that question? If everything here ends, what is truly worth investing our lives in? What are we supposed to really do? And this question marks, actually, it is a sign of spiritual intelligence. That's what Srila Prabhupada has been revealing in his purports. So there is mention of Rudra or Shiva. So let us understand his role in this whole divine plan. Within this cosmic cycle, Rudra or Shiva plays a unique and often misunderstood role. Many people describe him as the destroyer, but in Bhagavatam, this destruction is not an act of anger or chaos. It is a sacred function within the supreme will of, as per supreme will of the Lord, within the divine order. And when the time of cosmic dissolution arrives, the Supreme Lord empowers Shiva to withdraw the manifested universe, just as wind disperses the clouds, like is mentioned in this verse. So the elements return to their subtle state, waiting for next cycle of creation. And seen through the lens of devotion, this is not destruction. It is purification and preparation for renewal. We know Lord Shiva is one of the greatest devotees of the Lord. Vaishvanam yatha Shambhu. The Bhagavatam declares in another famous statement that amongst all Vaishnavas, Shiva is the greatest, and his apparent role in destruction is to actually a service to the Supreme Lord. And another example of this intimate connection between Shiva and Krishna appears in the pastime surrounding Banasur. This pastime appears in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10. Let me take a look at the time. We have, 15 minutes. So Banasur was a powerful king. This is a very sweet pastime, sweet story. And he is a devotee of Lord Shiva. And because of his devotion, Shiva personally protected him. Yet Banasur eventually became arrogant and misused his power. When he fought against Krishna, an extraordinary battle unfolded in which Krishna and Shiva appeared to oppose each other. Can you imagine that? However, this conflict was not born of enmity. It was divine pastime. Ultimately, what happened? Krishna defeated Banasur, but spared his life out of respect for Shiva's devotion. So we learn a profound spiritual truth. Even when divine personalities appear to clash, they are in conflict, their actions are harmonized within the will of the Supreme Lord. So Shiva's loyalty to his devotees and Krishna's compassion towards Shiva, what does that show us? That illustrates the deep spiritual relationship between them. Let's talk about Vrindavan, where Lord Shiva resides in form of... Anyone comment on that? Where do we find Lord Shiva in Vrindavan? Anyone comment on that? Hare Krishna.
In the four directions, Gopeshwar Mahadev.
Yes, Gopeshwar Mahadev. So here, Lord Shiva stands as guardian of the sacred land of Lord Krishna's pastimes. And so we learned that Lord Shiva once desired to witness Krishna's Ras Leela, the most intimate pastime of spiritual dance with the gopis. But entry into that divine pastime requires a mood of pure devotion. And by grace of Yogamaya, Shiva assumed the form of a gopi and was allowed to enter. And because of this, devotees in Vrindavan first offer respect to Gopeshwar Mahadev before entering deeper meditation on Lord Krishna's pastimes. And this actually helps us understand an extraordinary lesson, that even the cosmic controller who is responsible for universal dissolution longs for opportunity to participate in Krishna's loving pastimes. And the greatest personalities of universe do not aspire for control or power. They aspire for service and devotion. So, let us take some lessons for devotees from this verse. How how to understand transforming temporary things in this temporary world of material miseries into eternal service. If everything in material world is temporary, a natural question arises, what should we do with our lives while we are here? And Bhagavatam does not recommend rejecting the world in frustration. And we have beautiful pastimes of Srila Prabhupada also when, rich man, someone approached him and expecting that Prabhupada would reject it, right? So Prabhupada said, he will take everything and use it in Lord's service. So here, Srimad Bhagavatam is not recommending to reject the world in frustration. Instead, it teaches a far more powerful example, use everything in service of the Lord. And this idea is so beautifully expressed throughout the teachings of Srila Prabhupada, who often explained that nothing is inherently material if it is connected to Krishna. Yukta Vairagya, we read about these two terms, Yukta Vairagya and Falgu Vairagya. What is the proper way to renounce or use everything? So Yukta Vairagya is the way to use everything in service of Krishna. So a microphone used for gossip may deepen illusion. The same microphone used for kirtan becomes spiritualized. There are so many podcasts going on. You get out on YouTube and you can identify this point I'm making. A home used for sense gratification binds the soul, and the same home used for Krishna Bhakti becomes a temple. A devotee, therefore, does not fear the temporary nature of matter. Instead, he sees as an instrument for devotion. And Bhagavad Gita talks about that. Chapter 9, what does it say? Yat karoshi yadashnasi, yadjuhoshi dadasiyat. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever austerities perform should be done as an offering to Krishna. So this transforms ordinary activities into eternal spiritual progress. Even though physical objects may eventually dissolve in cosmic cycle, the devotional intention remains eternally recorded in soul's spiritual journey. And chapter 2 of Gita reminds us that. What is that verse? Anyone remembers? There is no loss or diminution on this path of bhakti. Anyone remembers? Neha abhikram nasho asti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpam api asya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. Very beautiful verse. So thus a devotee sees the world differently. Instead of trying to possess things permanently, he seeks to engage them meaningfully in this temporary world, which is subject to dissolution, annihilation. So a materialist asks, how long can I keep this? Whereas what would a devotee say? How can this serve Krishna? So this shift of consciousness turns the temporary world into a path towards eternity, opposite of temporary, eternity. So the ultimate perspective, let us understand better how to redirect our vision beyond cosmic creation, from temporary cycle to eternal relationship. Even the immense cycles of universal manifestation are temporarily compared to eternal reality of Krishna's spiritual abode. So again, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, there Krishna describes eternal nature that exists beyond the changing universe, a realm that never undergoes destruction. And chapter 8 of Bhagavad Gita is titled Attaining the Supreme. I believe that's the title. And spiritual kingdom, importance is described, right? So Bhagavatam elaborates on that realm in its descriptions of Goloka Vrindavan, where Krishna eternally performs loving pastimes with his devotees. And what is the speciality of Goloka Vrindavan? In that world, there is no fear of time, no dissolution, no separation caused by destruction, no kunthas, kunthas. So instead, there is only loving exchanges. And when devotees meditate on temporary nature of this world, the purpose is not to become discouraged. Rather, it is to redirect our love towards the eternal relationship with Krishna. And, clouds example is given metaphorical here. Just as clouds appear and disappear in the sky, while sky remains unchanged, the cosmic cycle of creation and destruction unfold, while Krishna's eternal pastimes continue forever. So, what is the hope for us souls? Every soul can return to that eternal reality. By using this temporary life in devotion, the soul gradually awakens its original relationship with Krishna. This is called Sambandha Gyan. And then the cycles of creation and destruction no longer bind the soul. Instead, the devotee becomes established in eternal service. So when Bhagavatam describes cosmic creation and destruction, it simultaneously is also talking about a remarkable contrast. On one side, we see vast universes appearing and disappearing under the influence of time. And on the other side, we see sweet, intimate pastimes of Krishna and Vrindavan. And difference between these two realms is profound. In the material world, everything moves under the influence of kāle, time. And time builds and destroys. Time creates youth and takes it away. Time builds civilizations and time reduces them to ruins. But Srimad Bhagavatam reveals that in Krishna's abode, time does not destroy love. The residents of Vrindavan do not think in terms of cosmic cycles, pralaya, or universal dissolution. Their consciousness is absorbed entirely in loving Krishna. Mother Yashoda, let's talk about her. Mother Yashoda wakes up early in the morning to prepare butter for Krishna. She's not thinking about the creation of universe. What is she thinking? Will my Lalla wake up soon? Will he be hungry? And when gopis hear the sound of Krishna's flute at night, they do not think about temporary nature of the world. Their hearts rush towards Krishna with spontaneous love. And yet their love itself demonstrates the deepest truth about reality. Everything in material world is temporary except soul's relationship with Krishna. That relationship is eternal. And Srimad Bhagavatam therefore reveals the ultimate goal of spiritual life is not merely understanding cosmic philosophy. The goal is awakening the same pure love that exists in Vrindavan. Now, last line of the purport says, let me go to that. It says, okay, last two lines. The temporary creation is thus exhibited and destroyed just to give information to the conditioned soul who is attached to temporary things. It is meant to give him a chance for self-realization and not sense gratification, which is the prime aim for all fruitive actors. What is the aim of fruitive actors? So sense gratification is one of them, but basically we know dharma, artha, kam, moksha. Dharma, religiosity; artha, economic development; kam, sense gratification; moksha is liberations. Yet there is a fifth one, which is the goal or the aim of those following spiritual practices to please Krishna. What is that? Love of Godhead. So these are all described in Srimad Bhagavatam. And so the aim of devotees is not merely understanding cosmic philosophy. The goal is to awaken pure love, that same pure love I just described that exists in Vrindavan. So, so there are a few examples I wanted to talk about, few pastimes, but due to we have again run out of time, I will just conclude the talk now. So when we step back and look at the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam, we see a beautiful pattern. The material world operates through cycles of creation and destruction, and Srimad Bhagavatam constantly redirects our attention towards something deeper, the eternal relationship between the soul and Krishna. And destruction is not meant to scare the devotee or frighten the devotee. It is meant to awaken spiritual urgency. Every passing day quietly reminds us that time is moving forward. Bodies change, circumstances change, possessions come and go, but each day also brings a new opportunity to deepen our connection with Krishna. And residents of Vrindavan teach us the highest lesson in this regard. They are not detached because they have rejected the world in frustration. They are detached because their hearts are completely absorbed in Krishna. When love for Krishna awakens, everything else naturally finds its proper place. So imagine someone spending his entire life constructing a beautiful sand castle on the beach, and he shapes every tower carefully and decorates every wall. But as the sun begins to set, the tide slowly approaches. And no matter how carefully the castle was built, the waves will eventually wash it away. And Srimad Bhagavatam, is helping us understand this urgency, that are we spending our lives building sand castles? Are we building something eternal? And every act of devotion, every moment of chanting, every offering of service, every sincere remembrance of Krishna, it creates a spiritual treasure that cannot be destroyed by time. And empires may vanish, universes may dissolve, but loving service offered to Krishna remains forever. And that eternal connection is the real purpose of this temporary world. So, with this, I want to just help everyone, come to this realization towards a powerful truth, that time will take everything from us except one thing, our relationship with Krishna. And we may lose our physical strength, we may lose our social position. Eventually, universe may even dissolve, but as I said earlier, our relationship with the Lord and the love we cultivate will remain forever. And this world is a temporary training ground for that eternal love. This world is not meaningless. Though temporary, it's not meaningless. It's giving us the opportunity to get trained for that eternal love. So if you watch news and if you hear that some kind of annihilation is in store and universe will one day be withdrawn by divine power, like we are reading here, Rudra, divine power of Shiva, we should not feel fear. Instead, we should remember something beautiful. The same Supreme Lord who governs cosmic destruction is also playful cowherd, blue boy, the blue cowherd boy of Vrindavan. And he is inviting every one of us to join him there through devotion, through remembrance, through loving service. And that invitation is the real message of Srimad Bhagavatam. And that invitation begins right now in this very moment when we remember and serve Krishna with sincerity and love. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Thank you very much.
Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Very, very wonderful, very inspiring class, making us think of dissolution as not a negative thing, but very much putting it in its place for us to actually have a wonderful outlook of how life is, even in the material world, how it's set up, and Krishna's mercy, how it comes through. Hare Krishna. Dear devotees, this is the time. If you have a question, you can definitely unmute yourself and ask the question. Or if you want to raise your electronic hand too, you can, and I'll call you. Any questions? Or if there's some statements that inspired you too, you definitely can talk about those. Damodar Prabhu, please go ahead. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisance. All glories to Prabhupada. All glories to the devotees on the call. Thank you so much, Mataji. It was so nice class this morning. I I could resonate to the first question you asked, like if everything is going to be annihilated, what are we doing? Like, why there is so much chaos that we are building? Because this was the question. Like, I used to think like uh, when I like as I feel that when I started understanding things in life, you know that I'm growing older, then you arrive to the point where you are in teenage years, somewhere like that. You start understanding things a little bit, and this was the question that used to come to my mind. And somewhere the answer, Krishna consciousness gives this answer. What is the purpose? So thank you so much. And again, like how mm, like wonderful the Bhagavatam classes are. Like every day this reminder is needed that we are this soul, and we need to go back to Godhead. So that also is a nice reminder. I have a question. Towards the end, you were mentioning that the love that we develop for Krishna, uh, that will always remain with us. But you know, and like the physical body and the social status and whatnot, like that will vanish. But the love will for Krishna will remain. But like in the process of developing, like right now I haven't developed anything, but in the process of development of that love, if suppose like uh, like my physical strength or like this body is lost, then like what is your comment? That makes me fearful, and that makes me sometimes sad, like before getting that pure love, like if I have to leave this body, then like that is somewhere my question. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. All right. Thank you. That's a nice question. And we should all think on similar lines, and we should not develop fear about it. Things can happen to anyone depending on their past karmic background, their sincerity, their level of surrender, and miseries. They appear through mind, through other living entities, through natural forces. Birth, old age, death, disease is something inevitable. So death can happen anytime. Hence, there is an urgency to learn, urgency to bring a transformation in our heart, to spiritualize, to understand our relationship. And if that journey, if that process is yet incomplete, there is a promise in Bhagavatam and through pastimes of, there's a promise in Bhagavad Gita and through pastimes in Srimad Bhagavatam, one gets an opportunity to be born again in the family of Brahman or a rich family where they can further continue on their spiritual life. Now, there are some examples of animals also, and so there have been personalities who, due to some attachment they develop later in their life, and then they were born in the next body of an animal, but then they eventually they were liberated. They achieved perfection. So first point, that promise is there in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna has narrated all that to Arjun, but these teachings are for humanity. It is a handbook for all of us. The second thing, there is another verse in chapter 2, which I refer to in my talk, that nothing is lost. Any bhakti practice which you do in life, you further add on to that in next lives if that work is incomplete, if complete purification hasn't happened, if we haven't yet been qualified to enter spiritual kingdom, Vaikunthas, then Krishna is very compassionate. Krishna is very kind. Through the agency of his energies, he lets us take birth again and work on that. So, and then of course, this chapter itself talks about there are controlling deities of different body parts which monitor our next birth also. All right. So did I give you enough information for your answer?
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can add myself to it. I was also very satisfied how you went about answering the question. It was wonderful. Hare Krishna. Any other questions or comments by the Buddhis? It's a wonderful class, as you mentioned. It's really, really nice. So much you learn from it. Especially for me, my takeaway is that annihilation, that part of it done by Lord Shiva, is not to be looked at as something very negative. No. That point you made it very clear. Yeah, it is part of a cycle, but we don't say, oh, Krishna is doing something really bad or Shiva is doing something really bad just because or the universe is dissolved, or at least partially dissolved even when Lord Brahma goes to sleep. Very important point. Thank you very much. Any comments and questions by the Buddhis? We're a little bit past the hour, but still, any final comments? If not, then thank you very much, Mataji, for coming to your classes. Your classes have always been inspiring, and today was no different. So that's wonderful. All right, Buddhis, this is the beginning of the, your weekday. For those of you who are working, a few of us are retired, but still we know Mondays, that type of day, and people concentrate on how to keep going, but keep going with Krishna consciousness. So that is the most important thing. Thank you all for coming. Vanchakapatarubhishya kripa sunive evacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Again, thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.